Before Kang the Conqueror bent time to his will, he was simply Nathaniel Richards. Take a trip back in time and see his rise to power. All this and more in the pages of Kang the Conqueror issue number 1. Alrighty then, so as we open up on this new Secret Origin miniseries, we're in the 31st century, a damn utopia where scientific advancements have made it so no one hungers. And even the most gravest injuries and illnesses are able to be cured in a matter of time. Of course, not everyone is on board with this state of bliss, as we see Nathaniel Richards, a long descendant of Reed Richards in the Fantastic Four, has grown quite bitter and antisocial about the time and place that he's been born into. He thinks it's all too sterile, too stagnant, no one is wanting to make history anymore, as all their needs are pretty much already met. It's because of that young Nathaniel sets out on a quest to try and find the ancient library of Victor Von Doom. Now, as I mentioned at the top of the video, this is an origin story for Kang, and despite them being central and important to many big Marvel stories over the years, we've never actually gotten a solid timeline of events for Kang. One thing we knew for sure, though, was at some point a young Nathaniel Richards came in contact with one of Dr. Doom's old time machines. You think that's what's gonna happen here in this story, but they end up swerving you as young Nathaniel comes face to face with his older self, Kang the Conqueror. Kang has come back to this point in his own history in hopes of recruiting his younger self and training them to be able to overcome all the defeats that Kang himself had suffered at the hands of the Fantastic Four and the Avengers. At first, young Nathaniel isn't exactly certain about trusting his more evil future self, but ultimately he acquiesces, just hoping to go on an adventure. And what an adventure they go on too. Kang takes the young boy all the way back to the time of the dinosaurs, a year before they'll all be wiped off the map. It's here that Nathaniel learns to hunt and fight and kill and all the other skills that will be greatly important to him as he grows into Kang the Conqueror. It's here Kang fills the head of his younger self with tales of his great empires, riches, and conquests that the future holds. In fact, Kang actually goes out of his way to recycle that famous Alexander the Great quote about weeping because there are no more worlds to conquer. Only in Kang's version, Alexander wept because there were too many worlds to conquer and not enough time to do it. Nathaniel's relationship to his older self isn't all sun and rainbows either. Kang is a hard guy to like and even a harder guy to live with. He's prone to drinking, bouts of depression, and sometimes in his darker moments he even breaks down in tears saying the name Ravonna over and over again. That's yet another reason that Kang tries to teach his younger self to harden his heart against love. For love in matters of the heart is the only thing that can conquer a conqueror, don't you know? Naturally, young Nathaniel is all too quick to forget all of these lessons one day when he's out hunting a great T-Rex. Bringing it down is easy enough when he brings a laser rifle to a dinosaur fight. It's on this fateful day that young Nathaniel ends up coming face to face with a beautiful cave woman by the name of Adai. And considering when we first met this kid he was a 31st century incel living behind a screen, you can bet he falls head over heels in love at first sight of a woman who's not actively repulsed by him. Adai invites him back to her village where they end up partying and meeting the local chief medicine woman who gifts Nathaniel for his bravery those 2 little marks on his face, aka those things that'll be part of his mask design in the future when he eventually becomes Kang the Conqueror. It's also here too that Nathaniel ends up falling in love with these tribespeople's culture. Despite what his older self had been telling him, these people had music and culture and rituals that he never thought possible, and now Nathaniel gets it in his head that maybe he can save them from their upcoming doom. Of course, his older self is not on board with this idea and is furious at the concept of his younger self becoming some sort of starry-eyed idealist. And wait, before you ask the question, shouldn't older Kang know all about this because he lived through it once before himself? Isn't this a time paradox? You don't have to worry about that because Kang says he creates paradoxes all the time and it's not a big deal. To punish himself from straying from the one true path, Kang goes out of his way to eliminate the entire village of tribespeople down below, rendering them all to ash. Nathaniel refuses to let this slight pass, and because of that he concocts one hell of a villainous scheme, arguably his first villainous scheme. He waits for his older self to get drunk, and once he's fully passed out, Nathaniel decides to steal his time travel suit, which naturally he had been learning to use this whole time in secret. The plan being that Nathaniel will use the suit to travel to another time period and strand his older self here right when the meteorite is about to strike Earth. The first part of that plan ends up going off without a hitch. it. The only problem is Nathaniel can't quite steer the time suit, and he ends up traveling all the way back to ancient Egypt in the time of Rama-Tut. Rama-Tut, of course, being yet another version of Kang. And it's right around there that the comic ends, everyone. And so that was Kang the Conqueror issue number 1, and I thought it was pretty alright. Kang the Conqueror is one of those characters who's getting a lot of multimedia push right now for obvious reasons. And so the powers that be within Marvel have figured now is probably as good a time as any to hammer out a real solid origin that's not just pieced together from a lot of hearsay and other stories that may or may not be out of print. I'm actually reminded very much of what Jason Aaron did with his Thanos origin story back when he was slated to become the big overarching villain of the Marvel Universe. This new origin story does about as well as you can do with the character of Kang. I know he's always been mechanically important to the Marvel Universe and been there at big major watershed moments, but honestly, I never thought there was that much character inside this character. If the writers of this new story zero in on any interesting idea, it's the one that says that Kang's greatest foe is not the Avengers or the Fantastic Four or any superhero in general. Kang's greatest enemy is Kang himself. This origin, I'm guessing, is going to try and tell us the story of how a young, idealistic Nathaniel Richards eventually grows into the cynical Alexander the Great-esque Kang over a long period of time. And that's certainly well and good. I just don't know if it's enough to keep me personally invested in the story, even if this is arguably the best Kang story they've told in a while. Ultimately, I would give this one a 7.5 out of 10. Hey there everyone, Cape Joel again, and I want to thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. As always, if you liked what you see, be sure to like, subscribe, comment. It really helps drive engagement and helps me out too. Also, if you are a patron, which you can become for as little as $1 a month, you will get exclusive content that no one else can ever see, and you'll get to see the Comic Multiverse podcast before anyone else too. You can check out all this and more down in the description. And until next time everyone, this has been Cape Joel, and I'll see you all next time. Cheers.